the WTM program as well as the GDG program. As you can tell, you all just went through this amazing certification program. We're going to make a special announcement afterwards about some extra cool perks and benefits that you'll get with completing your training. And so I love being a part of the WTM program, just meeting other ambassadors in the area like Anna as well, getting a platform to speak, just feel more comfortable to just be up here with like no qualms because we're all in a safe space. And so I just really love learning and connecting with other WTM ambassadors, finding this level of mentorship that I had needed in my journey, and like I mentioned, the resources and just access to really cool opportunities like attending cool conferences. It was just like, oh my gosh, like I could not believe that these opportunities were available to just little old me or to someone who wasn't in tech at that time. And so really exciting that we have like the OGs of the WTM program here.
The OG,
so
I'm not the OG. You're the OG.
yes.
To be at, I'm the OG.
So Natalie and Rana were part of like founding the Women Techmakers program. Natalie, I think, was like the brainchild leading that program. So I'm really excited to just hear about how that got started and just any juicy stories about that.
Juicy stories.
Amazing.
The hot goss. Yeah.
Well, whatever you want to share.
Oh,
we're
I love
all
gossip.
We're all for it. It's a safe space. So she's currently right now the VP at the New York Times, leading strategy and inclusion. And Rana is still on our greater team. Really excited that you're still leading the global and marketing leaderships for the Women Techmakers program. And she just ran for Congress.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
We're going to talk about running for Congress.
It was not tech. That's not tech, but we can make it tech.
All interconnected.
It
building
is.
a greater society, right?
Yeah.
And everything. So
Yeah, for sure.
I'll let you both take it away. So
Awesome.
please
Thank
give
you.
them a big round of
So I know I have this microphone on. Is it for the camera or is it for people in here? It's for the camera. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Natalia Villalobos. I also recently changed my name a couple years ago to Natalia Villalobos. And you're going to see both on the internet because what I like to say is Natalie is my girl name. Natalia is my woman name. So I decided to make that change because I grew up in a bilingual household where both names were used, but one makes me feel better than the other. So just so you know, that's why Natalie and Natalia are also used. She calls me Natalia pretty often and with a beautiful accent, which I don't always get. So I would love to introduce Rana, so Rana and I, we're gonna get into some questions, but I'm really privileged to sit next to this woman because she's an inspiration for me for many reasons. And when the GDG organizers reached out to me, they were like, hey, do you wanna speak? And I'm like, not without her. So we've both been on some pretty epic journeys this year. 2022 has had highs and it has had lows. And when I was talking to the GDG team and the Women Techmaker ambassadors about what we might want to talk about, it was about change. And we were talking about this idea of change makers. And so the conversation that I want to have with my dear friend here is about change in the spirit of inspiration, in the spirit of we walk out of this room with something that feels like we can step into that hard place and make a difference for ourselves. So we can talk all day about the hot goss of how I created Women Techmakers with a great group of folks, how I got millions of dollars to support women in tech. Happy to talk about that. We're going to leave some time for Q&A, but the bulk of our conversation is going to be about how we took these big, bold leaps and how we landed on our feet. And so with that, I just want to start some opening questions. By the way, I wrote all these today, and she has barely seen them.
And I'm reading them all right now.
Yes.
It's going to be lit. It's going to be great.
No, but I love how Natalia came up with women change makers on the fly.
I mean,
I love this. I want to trademark this.
Yeah. Also, there's a whole thing we can talk about at some other point, like, should women even be at the front of it? Aren't we all just tech makers regardless of our gender, regardless of how we identify? But that's a different conversation. So before we get started, I would love to ask this room, how many people here wish they could make a change of something in their life, but they feel like they can't? Okay, I got that's actually a pretty fair amount. Maybe 15, 20. Hopefully at the end of this, more hands will be raised because I want everyone to feel like they can be inspired to do something new in their life. So Rana, I get the first question. I want people here to get to know us before we jump in. How did we become friends? And what is your earliest or perhaps favorite memory of our friendship?
Okay, so all right, so I started working in tech. It was really random. I actually do not have a technical background.
Neither do I.
And at that time, I was working for Google Cloud. And Natalia actually came to the Google Cloud team. I don't even know why you came to the Google Cloud team, but she came to the Google Cloud team. But what I do remember is she was like talking about Women Techmakers. And Women Techmakers, for those of you who don't know, is Google's Women in Tech brand, basically, which Natalia helped co-found, which is focused on building visibility, community, and resources for women in technology. And I was like, whoa, this exists. And I just remember in that moment being super excited that an entity within Google that was being funded by Google was doing so much work, not only across the United States, but reaching thousands of folks across the globe. Yeah. And it was across like 190 countries, 20,000 women who are part of this community.
300,000.
Oh. What, 300 what?
Yeah, 300 what?
Okay, I'm a bad marketer.
It's okay.
300,000.
This is
Don't
how the
listen
conversation
to me.
is.
300,000.
It might have been 20 back then.
It was 20,000 back then.
See, I'm gonna.
So I was really like enamored with the work and the commitment that Natalia had. And at the time, low key, don't tell anybody. Obviously, this is being streamed. I didn't really like my job. I'm sorry. And so I was like, I'm sorry. Okay.
As we're on the heels of like the cloud presentation.
Nobody tell anybody. Sorry. It was just that specific role. Cloud is great. You should all be in cloud.
Fair.
So I was like, okay, how do I get on this team? And so I started scheming.
You did scheme.
To figure out how I could finesse my life and get on this team. And Natalia you were like really great about it. Mm-hmm. So super open. And I know like a lot of people's career advice is like have coffee and just like try to network, but it really does have such a huge impact because every single moment where I had a really great opportunity, it was an opportunity that was created, a pathway that was created because I was able to build a relationship with someone.
Yep. And I would say like in New York, right? Like when we were pitching this conversation, it was like women change makers in New York. And I think I moved to New York a year and a half ago. And one of the things that I've realized is in New York, you have to have a hustle. Everyone has a different hustle, and I love it.
Raise your hand if you have a hustle.
Does anyone in here have a hustle?
Like everybody has a hustle.
Everything is a hustle.
That's so true.
In New York, you hustle.
Everyone's got 3 side hustles.
That's right.
So sad.
And I think that is such a beautiful, unique thing about New York is the level of entrepreneurship to get it done, and that's the spirit that Rana brings to things because I want to say it's how you were raised. Your mom's over here.
My mom is here. Everybody say hi to my mom.
The mother of hustle.
My mom hustles.
And I will say to Google Cloud's credit, even though that's a thing too, Allison, who is the chief marketing officer for Google Cloud, gave me Rana's headcount so that I could hire her, right? So it was like being in these rooms and making a case for some change to happen on the Women Techmakers team. I knew what muscle I didn't have, and I knew that I needed to hire the best, and that's why I got to hire Rana. I will say that is a very early memory of our relationship. Rana was wearing lots more gold chains than she is now. she was.
I toned it down like 5 gold chains.
Yeah, she's my favorite.
I'm
when
like
it comes
Egyptian and I'm from Queens, so we wear a lot of gold.
But I'm gonna tell them really quick. My favorite memory of you. You already know this, and you're probably gonna be so embarrassed.
Oh no, please don't tell them.
You don't want me to tell them?
Okay, but if you want to, fine. You can tell them.
So we were in Canada.
Oh my God.
And we were sailing. This is already very dramatic.
Yeah.
And we were sailing in a competition together. She was on my team. And Rana got seasick.
I got seasick. I get really nauseous. I didn't get seasick.
Well, you were trying to prevent
seasickness.
So she ate all of the entire package of seasickness medicine.
Because I'm like anxious about being seasick.
And so then we get on land and she's like, what?
I was like kind of high.
And I was like, oh, I gotta watch this now. Right. So
it was my first week on the job.
It was. And here she is. She's eating all of the medicine. But I love her.
Thank you.
Then and now. And I think what was really important was I had this moment where I was like, I gotta watch this one. And so I got to be Rana's manager for a few years. And we're gonna jump into it, but I'll kind of preface it by this. So you're gonna ask the next question, and then I'm gonna follow up with the next one, which is the big thing you asked me when I was your manager. So over to you.
All right, so a lot of, part of the theme of this is obviously change and really thinking about like ways in which we jump into opportunity or not. And obviously like you made big moves last year. Natalia is no longer at Women Techmakers, which, you know, is sad. But as we heard, she is a whole VP at the New York Times, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if you talk to us a little bit about that role personally, because I haven't heard that much about your role and what you've been up to.
We haven't had coffee.
We haven't talked about it yet. Yeah.
So I left Google in January after being there for about 12 years. So I had been like in it. I loved it. I launched Google+. I worked on Black equity and the representation of Black developers in the United States. We founded something together called Black Women Techmakers, which was really important to me. I worked on Women Techmakers for over 7 years, growing it as Google's investment in gender equality specifically for women in technology. And I was really fulfilled. I had a great manager. I had a great job. I had great friends, free food, all that stuff. And I was like, now's the time to go.
Yeah.
It's like, I learned this thing of like leaving on a high note rather than leaving on a low note.
It's real.
And I had never really left anything like that before. And last year, when I was thinking about it, it was kind of like late last year, I took a sabbatical. I took 3 months off, and none of it was planned. I come from a background of engineering program management. I program managed my life. And I decided to take 3 months off where I program managed nothing. And I just wanted to see what life was like and what did it bring me, and it brought me the New York Times. So I was interviewing around. I actually hired a friend of mine, her name's Rashumba, and we actually did some really great work around what is my identity without the company that I work for? What are my values? What do I stand for? What kind of change do I want to make in the world? And so when I was interviewing with different companies, you know, lots of different groups, lots of different ideas, financial, design, tech, the New York Times, epic brand, 170 years old. And I'm like, okay, institution, how do I see this as a public good, and as a steward of that public good, do something right by it for the time that I'm there? So I signed with the New York Times late last year, and I started in January, and it's my first role as an executive. That's why I'm wearing heels. I don't normally wear heels, let's be real, but like, you know, it's important for me to throw myself out into the void, into the unknown, into the uncomfortable, and I want to see how I will fly. You can't stay in comfort forever or you will not learn. So I think that was a really important part for me in making this bold move. So now I'm the Vice President of Inclusion Strategy and Execution, which means that I take care of all 5,000 employees at the New York Times. Those are folks that live in Queens over at our print plant, our folks in Virginia, at our international offices in Seoul, Paris, and London. We have a number of bureaus around the world. Imagine the New York Times puts out 200 stories a day. And that doesn't all just come from New York. That comes from lots of people around the world. So right now I'm taking everything I learned at Google, all that gender equality, racial equity, and I'm putting it into the New York Times to make that common good even better. Tell me about your bold move. Actually, I'm going to tell them what you told me first and how you pitched your bold move.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know. Oh, no. I don't remember anything.
I'm just here to embarrass Rana.
All the embarrassing stories.
Yeah.
This
So
is friendship.
When I was Rana's manager, which again, a privilege and an honor, we were having a regular conversation. Every quarter you should have a conversation with your manager about how your career is going. So we're sitting down. I want to say we were in Amsterdam. I'm trying to remember where we were. Maybe it was Ireland. And I'm like, okay, what would you like to do with your life? Thinking that she's going to tell me she wants to be like the chief marketing officer for Google. And she's like, I want to run for Congress. And I was like, next level. And I was like, how do I prepare this woman to go run for Congress? And we worked on some skills, but most importantly, I was like, serve me this audaciousness to tackle a big problem. So tell this room and viewers at home about that move.
Yeah.
You ran for Congress.
Yes, I ran for Congress last year. Actually, 2 years ago, I took the step. And I was at Google, so it was a very interesting journey to do. Actually, I was at Google the entire time. Because they don't pay you to run for office. So I was running for office and also, no, Google did not fund my campaign. I was not Google funded.
I added some money in there, but like, she had to ask a lot of people.
Yeah, I had to ask a lot of people for money. So So I have always been an organizer. I've been a community organizer since I was 14 years old. I grew up in Queens. I'm the child of immigrants. My mom's right here. Grew up in a working class community and just really grew up in a context, especially post 9/11, where my community was targeted, surveilled, experienced a lot of housing insecurity, just like things that immigrant communities might experience in a city like New York. And that's what activated me to do this kind of public service and community work and advocacy. And so I don't think I ever really imagined myself in elected office. So that's kind of the bold move, in that I didn't know like when it would happen. I just always imagined myself as an organizer. But I think recently seeing a lot more people who look and sound and come from communities like mine stepping up for leadership in that way, especially within the context of the pandemic, where I saw my community really erased in that conversation in Queens, inspired me to want to jump in.
Yeah.
And so it was bold in that I, had to have conversations with like every single person in my life and really think about all the things, right, that they don't prepare you for, from media to financial well-being to mental health to like how do you also prepare your community for potential not win, right, and loss and redistricting, which is what happened to me. And so I feel really lucky that I was actually approached by an organization called Justice Democrats, which is the organization, has anybody heard of them? They're the organization that ran AOC. Yeah.
Has anyone here heard of AOC?
Yeah.
Cool.
So they ran AOC and Ilhan Omar and others, and so they basically they identified me and helped me launch and run my campaign.
Yeah.
And so when an opportunity like that comes knocking at your door, I feel like it's very hard to say no. And actually the way that it came was after me speaking at a panel just like this.
Really?
So I was like speaking at a panel, talking about my neighborhood, talking about the work that we were doing, and someone in the room was like part of that organization. So maybe one of you all will get, I don't know, an opportunity like this will come your way as well. And it was a beautiful journey. It was the hardest experience of my life. And I definitely learned a lot, I think, from doing gender equity, both in private sector, but also in public sector, and learned a lot being in the tech space. So I'm a union member. I feel very proud to be in the tech workers union, and being in the tech workers union, CWA, actually the union came through for me as well. Like folks from within tech were really backing my campaign and like supporting and helping me craft like what our tech policy would be and how we would talk about labor and labor rights, like as a worker, and so that was really powerful to experience the intersectionality of both of those.
Before you ran for Congress, how did you prepare, or like what did you wish you knew before you threw yourself out into this public arena of debate?
Everybody's vicious now. I'm just joking. What did I wish I knew? I don't know. Oh, this is kind of sad, but okay, maybe I'll say a happy thing and a sad thing. The sad thing is that money is like, I mean, y'all know, money has a lot of influence on politics in the United States, unfortunately. Like I spent a lot of my time raising money, and I was committed, even though obviously like I worked in tech, I work in the private sector, I was committed not to take any corporate money, so was really getting donations small dollar. So people were donating like 20, people who I literally dropped off groceries to their house like 3 weeks ago were like, here's $20 because we really believe that what you're doing matters and this kind of representation matters. And that was like both a really powerful thing that we were able to mobilize $1 million. We raised $1 million.
It was epic.
And then the positive thing was that like people really came through. Like people were knocking doors. It was completely volunteer led. Throwing house parties. It was comedy shows. Like this is how it was really grassroots, and it was beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you? Was there a moment?
I love that she like transitioned.
I'm like,
what is your hard thing?
What is your hard thing? No, but I'm serious. So you obviously took on this new role as well, which is in a different sector, and we'll talk about that in a bit too. And you had been at Google for 12 or 13 years.
Yeah.
So I could imagine jumping into a completely new space must have been also a challenge. So were there any things that you learned?
There's things that, what did I wish I knew? So I will tell you, working at Google means that you have access, obviously, to great engineers. I really miss centralized tools. It's funny, we have the best intranet at Google, like intranet to search for things internally. I really miss that. There's a great team at the New York Times that's working on our intranet right now, and I'm on a working group because I was so passionate about like the quality of engineering and the intranet. So there are like certain things. I don't really miss the free food. I don't really like miss, you know, a lot of that kind of stuff. But some things that I wish I knew going into it, I think would be, when we think of the New York Times, we think of New York. And I kind of already mentioned this. We have offices and bureaus everywhere. And not because not everyone is in New York, not everyone gets the same sort of like face-to-face opportunities to meet with executives, to feel heard or represented. So what's really important to me is to go to all those offices and meet with those folks, right? Because the New York Times is kind of like this misnomer. We think maybe, oh, everything comes from here. In reality, one of the things that I'm the most passionate about, and this is not just because Rana is sitting here, is College Point in Queens. It's where over 800 people are, you know, were the essential workers during the pandemic creating a newspaper. And I just went there for their 25th anniversary. So is everyone treated fairly at the New York Times? Like, can everyone be included in the conversation in the same way? So for me, the preparedness was really in thinking about like the massive different like companies we just acquired. Wordle was acquired the same day I was acquired. So that's like sort of like the milestone. We got Wordle, we've got games, we've got cooking, we've got, you know, all these different things. And I want to get to know everyone. And I didn't realize the New York Times was that diverse in terms of how the company is structured and organized. So I'm still getting to meet a ton of people. But I'm giving, you know, a special amount of love, especially to our international folks who don't always feel they're part of the New York Times.
Well, that's really interesting as well, because like I said, one of the things maybe that would be interesting for you to talk about is like the idea of going through different sectors, right? So like being in tech and then being at a place like the New York Times, which is like obviously journalism and non-tech, or we don't think about it as a tech company.
So the thing that she's pitching right now is actually a term I learned today, which is why it's new for the both of us. It's a term called tri-sector competence. So I went to this fancy conference today at the Harvard Club. I was sitting down with 100 diversity professionals. And one of the things that I think is really important, whether you're in tech or outside of tech, is that you don't just stay in tech, right? So the idea that people were talking about today is that when you're trying to get to the C-suite, or you're trying to be an executive, the opportunity is actually that you know a lot of different types of business, you know a lot of different types of companies or sectors. And that makes you even more hireable because the diversity of your experience is richer than perhaps someone who's just done one thing, one way, with one company for a long time. So the folks that I was sitting with, like I said, it was all these DEI professionals, and it was the executive search firms that are trying to place all these execs in all these top companies. So I was listening in and I'm like, what are the things that I'm hearing in this room that I can bring to rooms like this? And so, you know, for me, this idea really was new of like, I didn't think about it when I was leaving Google. Oh, I need tri-sector competence. But one of the things that I did talk about when I was on the Women Techmakers team is what are the areas and spheres of influence that you have? And so one of the ways I used to express it on Women Techmakers is, you know, the opportunity is like, it could be like me and Rana, right? And like our crew, there's Sequoia, there's Caitlin, there's Melissa, there's all these groups. There was like Women Techmakers as a team. Should our influence stop there? Don't worry about it. It's all good. You know, you go one layer out. Is it the organization that we sit in? Is that our area of influence? Oh, is it engineering? Is it Google? Is it more than just Google? Is it tech? What is beyond tech? So when I was building Women Techmakers, a lot of what I was thinking about was how many of those can I actually hit with any one project or program. Because if I just said this is for Google, or if I said this is just for tech, then we're not taking the capability of the program farther than, you know, we're not taking it as far as it can go. Its capabilities, there we go. And so I think that's really important, is anything you build, how many people can you positively impact with it? And I think that's kind of the intention behind tri-sector competence. It's this new term that I'm going to have to
that I just learned
get used to
right now. In this moment.
So as we're moving along, and I would just want to do a time check. Are we still good?
For you always.
Okay. I'm going to be mindful because I want to leave some room for Q&A. So maybe I'll do like one or two questions and we will want to leave some time. So I'm actually going to skip your question and I'm going to ask you one. It's okay. Don't worry about it. As we know, we need great teams of people to help us when we're making big, bold changes. You had to build an entire team, a campaign team, which I've never built. What did you look for in a great leader to support you when you were making that big, bold change?
Yeah. So actually, team building, that's a really, for me, right, for New Yorkers, when you have several side hustles, you need a crew. You need people who you really can trust. And I think that's kind of what was exhibited also in our relationship, was like the core of it was shared values and shared vision, right? And what was really great about like the way we work together, like I would be like, oh, Natalia, I want to do this women's online safety hackathon and bring like thousands of women together to hack the issue of online safety. And you'd be like, all right, just like go, like, so there was this like space really for me to thrive almost as an entrepreneur, like within Women Techmakers, because I feel like you trusted me as someone on your team. As I build, so it was the same thing within the campaign, right? Same thing now. Actually, when I think about team building, I think a lot about the nonprofit I run, which is called MALIKAH, which is like I run this nonprofit. It's self-defense, healing justice, like mental health, financial literacy for women and girls across New York City. And for me to build my team, and this is like when you build something, you really feel, which I'm sure you feel, you feel really close to it, whether it's like you're building a company, a startup, right? Or building a nonprofit, or building a team within an institution, is being able to really have clarity around like what your values are for what you're building, and then trying to find alignment through storytelling in your own interview process, which might feel kind of interesting and different, but in organizing spaces, we call that relational organizing. So it's understanding what motivates someone, what brings them to the table, why are they doing this work, and being like really honest with that motivation to try to also figure out like how do you make sure that people stay engaged and interested in the work? How do you create opportunities for them to stay connected to the work that they're doing, so they're not disconnected or like in this routine? And so I think about that a lot in the work that I'm doing with MALIKAH. We actually just made a hire today that I feel really excited about, and it was like through this several layered interview, right, of really trying to understand like why this person was really excited about this role and how they were different from other candidates. So that is really important for me.
I think Rana points something out too that I think is really thoughtful. She's a hard woman to say no to. And so when she came to me and pitched me ideas, like when she was like, I want to run for Congress, I was like, all right, how do we strengthen her voice? How do we help more people see her as a leader? And then she created something called Founded. And Founded is a video series originally during the pandemic. It was a podcast, and it was about bringing together women founders in the tech space to help share their best practices and their tips and their tricks. Because as Google, we could scale things really well. And so with her creative genius, we were able to actually bring these women founders from around the world to start sharing that knowledge to as many people as possible, right? And so I think there's something really positive when you're building a team. It's like, people will pitch you ideas all day long, and I would like to be someone who says yes and. I want to build on that yes. And something I think about the New York Times, I meet with so many different people. I talk to people in the newsroom every day. I talk to people internationally every day, people in engineering. Every person I talk to, I want them to be able to walk away from me more positive, more happy, more excited to solve their big problem than before they talk to me. Right? So how can I give them that little bit of extra energy, that push, so that they can make that change? Because it's hard. Making change is hard. I want to be the person who makes it easier. And I feel that also like in our relationship working together, especially at a place like Google, because I feel like I'm a creative, like I'm a marketer, and so I would come with these ideas, and it was a yes and how are you going to make this happen? And so it was like, all right, how am I going to get the money to like make the, so who's the partner that I'm going to work with? So with Founded, it was Google for Startups, right? And so we partnered with Google for Startups, which had the same objective as us. And so for me, the lesson that I got was if you are passionate about something and you do want to have impact even in your role where it might not feel, ours is very explicitly impact oriented, but it might not feel like it's very clearly impactful. You can, as long as you're able to really build those relationships in a way that has shared objectives
and there could be shared resourcing, you could really make so much happen beyond your own expectations.
Like shared change. It's not
exactly.
Just change for you or
Exactly.
change for me. It's like us.
And that's what I found in a lot of the work that we did together, was finding that opportunity for partnership.
So let's pick one more question and then open it up. She's got a couple here that she can pick if she wants.
I don't even have any. I'm just okay. I feel like this is such a Natalia question, so I'm just gonna ask you this.
I know which one you're gonna pick.
Okay, which one am I gonna pick?
No, you go.
What is your nightly ritual? See, because she's like she's like self-care. Are you taking care of yourself?
Taking care of Rana,
Which I'm
also
so
my
bad
mom
at.
takes care of herself.
I'm
She's
very
not
bad
good
at.
taking care of herself, right?
My mom's like, yeah, it's true. So what is your nightly ritual to wind down at the end of the day?
So I put this on here because I knew she's bad at self-care. It's not like I'm the best at it, but it's something that was really
You are the
important.
best at it.
One of the things that's really important to me on the teams that I manage. So I will say, at the New York Times, we use Slack. At Google, we don't use Slack. I don't have Slack on my phone. I don't know if anyone could pay me enough money to put Slack on my phone. No offense to Slack, right? I've got it on my desktop, and that's good. So like my mental health is the most precious thing in this world, besides my personal safety and joy. And so I think that my nightly ritual means shutting my laptop and not opening it again. Enjoying a good meal with someone I love, or could be a friend, could be whoever. It means a lot of TikTok, which like I probably shouldn't admit. I know. I heard something over here. Yes. There's like a hard no. During the pandemic.
I'm dead.
I was there. It was not. Way too much TikTok.
Way too much. You were with me during the pandemic?
We were all together.
We were all together in the pandemic. We were all locked in this room.
Everybody
So
was
I was
on
living
TikTok.
in Iowa. I love Iowa. I'm from the Bay. I'm from Oakland, but lived in Iowa, and I needed to laugh. The world was really hard, and I needed to laugh. I still have this thing where before I go to bed, I need to laugh. And it's like kind of this thing that's still trailing from the pandemic. Like that humor is important. I also have a really nice skincare regimen.
We could all tell.
All the lights in my room fade at a particular time that tells me to go to sleep. I have really nice sheets. Like this Brooklyn linen, whatever. Your bed should be what?
Egyptian cotton.
It's Egyptian, there we go. So you don't have to Rana, tell me, what is your nightly ritual?
Please don't ask me that. I don't have one. I sleep on my laptop. That's the end. We're all good. It'll be fine. My nightly ritual.
A relationship where I'd have to remind her.
She's like, did you
eat lunch?
But I don't want to talk about this because I feel like it promotes and glamorizes the hustle, which we are not trying to do.
Yeah.
We're trying to.
So, long story short, snack and take care of yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
We have so we had other questions, but I think at the end of this, I think what I really wanted you all to walk away with is that, sure, you can have a hustle, but take care of yourself. When it comes to change, pick good friends.
Yes.
Make change together, right?
Yeah.
I think that there are tools and resources out there to help you make that change, right? You don't have to make bold steps by yourself. Speak what you want into the world, and it will happen for you. And so I just want to really thank Rana for showing up. I dragged her out here from Queens because I wanted to spend time with her and her
But
mom.
I dragged my mom out. Sorry.
Yeah. Open this to Q&A before we head out for the night. Does anyone have any questions about literally anything that we've talked about? And then we'll dip into it. Yes, in the middle.
Hi, I'm Snehal. I feel honored to be in the same room as you, first of all. And so I'm a huge fan of Women Techmakers. I've been part of communities for so long. So I want to know what motivated you to start this Women Techmakers that is such a big thing today. What was that first point that, I have to do it? What was it?
Yeah. So I won't take credit for that seed, but I will point it to the people that did. So in 2012, my mentor, Megan Smith, created Women Techmakers. Megan Smith was a VP at Google for a very long time and is an exceptional woman. She left Google at a certain point to go become the chief technology officer for the White House under President Obama. So she had goals, right? She was like Rana. She was like, this Google thing's cool, but I need to go to the White House. So Megan Smith got together a group of folks, many of whom are no longer at Google. And what they really wanted to do was to create more visibility for women in tech. So they started it as a panel at Google I/O in 2012. I, like Rana, went to her in 2013 and I said, hey, I think this could be like a full-time thing. I think we can blow this up way beyond Google I/O. And here's my business case. And that was my crazy pitch. And Megan was like, okay, let me go ask Hiroshi Lockheimer, who many of you know runs Android for Google. And Hiroshi's like, I'll fund this as a full-time job. So it was Megan and Hiroshi and speaking it out into the world that created the change for Women Techmakers. It was someone saying yes to me. And then from 2013 onwards, really started thinking about what were all of the rooted issues that women in technology face, and how could we systemically solve them at scale using Google's levers, right? Our money, our platform, right? Our leaders, right? Our ability to scale to 190 countries. So to me, it was Megan's dream that she sold to others, that she, that I felt inspired by. And at the end of the day, Rana mentioned it, we got visibility, community, and resources on Women Techmakers, and all that is actually rooted in data around women, why women don't choose computer science. But what's really important to me is that Women Techmakers wasn't about technical women and non-technical women. It was just for anyone interested in tech, wanted to get involved. So that's why our resources are really based on providing that kind of inspiration. Mm-hmm. And it's an honor to be in this room with you too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You mentioned tribes. Well, I forgot the term already.
Yeah, no, don't worry. I'm still working on it too. Tri-sector competence.
What's the three? What's the tri? You define that term.
Yeah,
private,
I mean, the way that I heard it at this conference today was just the idea of like, they were saying they like to move leaders around from like non-profit to for-profit to
government,
to government, right? But the idea is that as a candidate, the more experience you have in more different environments, the more valuable you are.
But why try? Why not quad?
Hey man, if you want to
so formally, I think it's private sector, public sector, and then civil society. So CBO, like community-based organizations, nonprofits. Yeah.
And so I think with
civil society, like nonprofits, community-based organizations.
Yeah, I think they said education, but I think to me, right, it's like, maybe I stayed at the New York Times for 12 years, maybe I don't, but there are things to me where it's like, I want to make as many friends as possible before I die. So like maybe that's like a little bit of a career motivator. Like I want to go touch more, like I want to take this DEI muscle, this gender equality muscle, these friendships, and I want to figure out how to connect the dots across as many industries as possible, because what I've seen is that the New York Times experiences the same things Google does, right, as maybe somebody else. So like I want to kind of keep moving it around so we solve it together. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kimberly.
What up, Kimberly?
Hello. I'm so proud of both of you. Rana, that's amazing. So inspiring. I also wanted to know, someone who's just learning or just starting, what advice would you give, or what classes would you take getting into tech, learning how to just any advice from anybody, because I'm sure y'all all know something that I don't.
That's
so
okay.
I just want to know anything that I can take from this, any class, anything.
Do you want to go?
You go first.
Okay, well, I know that, for example, Women Techmakers, obviously, we have a lot of different opportunities just in terms of being plugged into the Women Techmaker ambassador community, because there's okay, so if you're signed up for Women Techmakers, you'll receive an email every month that will give you a list of certification programs that you could actually apply to, whether it's cloud certification or web dev certification, or whether you're interested in Android, right? And you could actually increase like your technical capacity across different like platforms and technologies. And sometimes they're like at a subsidized rate because like you're part of the community. Yeah. I think also just being generally part of the developer ecosystem and Google developer communities can be really helpful, because there's like study jams that people host where they will actually like study. I mean, I'm sure people in this room could probably talk about it more, but like study different technical topics, coding. They'll do like coding boot camps and stuff, so they could like realign, especially keeping up to date with the different things as they develop. And then I think just like in general, like we call it applied skills in our world.
Yeah,
but
we can talk on that.
Yeah, but just coming to spaces like this, networking, having opportunities for public speaking, telling your story. I see Madonna is here. Like, she's someone I had the opportunity to interview, and like now she's like, hosting her podcast and like really getting her story out there.
A boss.
A complete boss. And so there's like some things that you learn, right, through these certification programs and through the technical trainings, but there are other things that you don't learn. And those things you just get through being part of these community spaces and just like connecting and sharing your story. But I don't know.
And yeah, and when we say applied skills, I think one of the things that we were seeing is that people would come to me and they're like, soft skills. And like that soft skills felt optional. And I was like, hey, like soft skills are not optional. And if it's the terminology that's making you think it's optional, we're gonna call it applied skills. So that's like the word translation there. So applied skills are just as important as any other skill set. Public speaking, executive presence, project management, like ability to collaborate effectively with your peers. We're all busy. Certifications all day, every day. And if you're on the run, we've put a lot of time into the YouTube channel and to the Twitter. So there's also a LinkedIn page. So what I would encourage you to do is 1, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to share anything and everything with you. 2 is like look at those resources. Maybe you're on the train and you just want to like listen to a quick video, right? Or you want to connect with someone, right? It's like we at message a bunch of people on Twitter. So you can like poke around and find stuff and digest it at your own speed. But one of the things that I think Google does a really good job of is subsidizing the cost of things and increasing access to things. So like we just had the Firebase Summit, Dev Summit. I'm like still talking like I work here. But like, there's all these events where you can just like learn and you get to learn with others. And I think that's really inspiring. So you don't do it alone. Great question though.
I'm sorry. And you said, is it Malika?
Back here, Madonna.
Oh, Madonna.
No. You said, I think a website that founded it.
Oh, an organization I founded. Yes, MALIKAH.
How do you spell it?
MALIKAH.org. Yeah.
It's listed under Rana's profile on Meetup.
Yeah.
So just to add to that, the Women Techmakers program for becoming ambassadors is open to
Yeah.
folks to apply to become an ambassador. You can subscribe to the newsletter to just stay up to date with all the resources and information that you can get as a member. But I highly encourage you to consider becoming an ambassador.
Anybody else? I think we're like nearly at time. We got one in the back. Yeah.
Well, thank you both for being here.
Yeah.
I have a question for Rana. When you were running for Congress and you were working at Google, I know you mentioned that you didn't really take great care of your mental health, but what steps would you have taken now that you're
Yeah. So there are certain things that I sometimes exaggerate a lot. I'm Egyptian. Okay, there are certain things that I did do that really kept me rooted. I'm very close to my family. And so having like a network and community of folks that you can go to, I had a very close network of friends who are kind of just like my sounding board. People have been friends with since I was 14, who I've like organized with since I was 14. And so they really were like my supportive community in that way. I think other things like I've been athletic my whole life. Like I do martial arts, so making sure that I was working out, even though my mom's like, you should just sleep and not work out. But like working out is really important to me. And even simple things, like, which I know is gonna sound really weird, but eating 3 times a day at certain points on the trail was really, really hard. And the days in which I did, I was just like, all right, like that felt like self-care. And I think self-care manifests in different ways for other people. For all people, so whatever makes you feel, whatever fills your cup, right? That is good self-care.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, one more.
Thank you.
Thank you for the nice presentation. My name is Abdullah. I have a startup in the pre-funding stage.
Nice.
My question to you is, what advice would you give startup founders about setting up a policy for HR hiring that is very inclusive and also supportive of women, especially in relation to sexual harassment and those type of things? It's something at the policy.
It's amazing.
Bring in the
I have some ideas around that.
We should talk
But what
after.
advice would you give from the start? Because the moment you begin those policies, you can push it forward as a leader. So what advice would you give someone like myself
That's a great
to make sure
question.
those policies are in place?
Oof.
First, I'm just gonna say, if you're thinking about this now, you are already a great
MashaAllah.
founder,
Yes.
right? Like, I think sometimes what makes it hard on companies is when they think of this way late.
Yeah.
The way that I'll express it too is when you're as nimble as you are right now in your startup, when you're incorporating DEI practices, it can be like a speedboat, right? Where you're like, I can make this change, I can make it happen, I'm the founder, right? When, say, you grow to the size of, say, maybe, 10,000 people, it's like turning a cruise ship. You can't turn a cruise ship real fast, right? And so I think the values, if you haven't written them down, like the values of the company is really important. One of the things too that I would say is like expressing, it's maybe a little bit early, but like this idea of, what are you selling your candidates? Like, what is your employment brand? What is your story? I think for some folks there are like this set of like benefits and things like that. But one of the things that I think is really important to me that I would express to anyone is how you're expressing your values when it comes to a few different topic areas: hiring, progression, retention, and culture. So like diversity is not just in hiring, but it's in the culture that you're going to be developing to retain that person. When those folks are there, do they have clear pathways to success to continue to grow in your startup? Let's say, to your point, you said harassment. When someone has a feeling, an experience, a microaggression, do you have the clear systems in place that support and validate that person, where they have a clear escalation path where they can have someone on their side? In some cases in HR, you actually, it can be really scary to talk about harassment. I've had death threats, rape threats, and stalkers during my career. And, when I wanted to talk to someone about that, it was really scary as a person of one. So there's actually some good stuff around, you can bring a buddy to your HR complaint or to your HR scenario, so you have a friend. Things are always better when you have a crew, right? So, and that's kind of like your emotional support person. So that could be something to think about. But I think having these systems in place where equal access is there for everyone, I think is important. But I think there's a ton of good stuff that I'd be happy to share with you. But like I said, I think the fact that you're even thinking about this now, I'm like, ooh, yes, I can't wait to invest in his company.
You just got an investor.
Yeah.
You should follow up. She's serious.
Yeah.
She's actually a VC.
I went to, for many years I worked on our women's accelerator and helped validate the different companies that Google would give resources to specifically for women founders. So I know you might not identify as a woman, but I'm happy to find all the resources to make you successful.
Yeah, and I just wanted to quickly add to that, oftentimes people will think about the challenges once it's happened, so they will be reactive. Oh, congratulations.
We get 10 more seconds.
Congratulations.
This is like the mic
All right.
at the Grammys.
They'll be reactive. So I think I think Natalia said this, but setting norms and also setting the norm of what happens when harm does happen, right? And being clear about that norm correction is really important, because oftentimes they'll be like, oh, this is the values. And what happened? Like, there's no conversation about what will happen if something goes wrong, and things will go wrong, because every entity is a microcosm of the whole world, and so making sure there's clarity on that pathway is very important.
Thank you, everyone, for your time. I know
Thank
we
you.
took some extra time. Thanks for your questions. Us on LinkedIn or Twitter, anywhere. We're pretty active.
I don't use LinkedIn. Instagram, DM me.
Oh, Instagram. Oh.
I'm joking.